The Czech Republic has declared Saturday a national day of mourning after a gunman killed 14 people and injured 25 at the university in Prague.
Yes, the Czech Interior Minister said there was no indication the killings had any connection with international terrorism, and police are still working to find a motive.
They're also working on the theory that the gunman might also have been responsible for the deaths of 2 people in a forest.
Well, this comes as a large number of weapons were found at the university building yesterday, where we understand that the gunman was himself a student. He also died, but it's not clear whether he shot himself or was shot dead by officers.
Well, joining us to maybe tell us further and shed some light on the subject, GB News reporter Charlie Peters. Hello, Charlie. I mean, I imagine police are really working very hard at trying to trace his movements and whether he was responsible for other deaths.
And further reports indicated last night that he might have killed his father in the hours before he travelled from the west of Prague into the city centre to start this attack. Prague this morning is unbearably silent, according to people on the ground there, saying that in the square around Charles University where the shooting place, lights are off apart from in the department where this mass slaughter took place, where police have been working through the night. And they are now looking to establish that motive, having very quickly ruled out any links to international terrorism or extremism. There are now suggestions from the president of the police that this shooter, David Kozak, could have been revolved around some sort of online Telegram channel, a social media platform where you publish your perspectives with certain levels of encryption. They said that he could have been inspired by a recent mass shooting in Russia and did report a certain fascination with killing. So they are investigating his links to a shooting last Friday in the east of Prague in a forest, as you said, where a father and a 2-month-old infant was killed. They had started that investigation. And then in the west, his father shot several hours before this attack took place in the town of Hostun, which is where he originates from. So this journey into the city centre, the police, it said, they were aware that the gunman was travelling into the town. However, they evacuated the wrong building. They evacuated the building where he was expecting to have a lecture. The gunman didn't travel there. They did not evacuate the entire university. So while it is very silent in Prague this morning, some murmurs about how this could have happened. Were adequate steps taken to ensure the safety of those students? 14 killed and over 24 injured, some of them very seriously. Care obviously going on urgently overnight. And those questions still being asked because there was a warning. Police were aware that a gunman was travelling into the city centre.
Oh, my goodness.
In the Czech Republic, of course, the ownership of firearms is permitted in certain circumstances. And this 24-year-old student did have legal ownership of several firearms. But intelligence did suggest that this gunman was travelling in possibly to kill himself, not actually to turn the gun on his peers.
It's interesting because when the news first started to break, we did hear that he was going towards, or it happened in the philosophy building or something like that.
The arts
and then
building
later it was the Faculty of Arts. And that would explain that maybe they thought he was going to a different building.
They expected him at a 2 p.m. lecture, and this is the original room that they evacuated based on the intelligence that, of course, hasn't fully been released to the media yet. But it's clear now, of course, that that evacuation was insufficient and that the wider campus area was also part of this targeting. After a killing of a man in the west, for a gunman to then travelling be in the centre of the city, questions are being asked this morning. Were adequate steps taken? Was that a sufficient police protection programme, or did more need to be done? Obviously, footage emerged very quickly after the incident yesterday of a man on a balcony with a long-barrel rifle. We believe that was the shooter, David Kozak, of course, but also footage, remarkable footage, of students leaping from balconies, seeking shelter wherever they can. The police last night did say that they did the right thing, those students, because they barricaded themselves in those rooms very effectively. They took shelter in place instead of fleeing immediately, and those who couldn't take shelter were seen leaping from balconies onto areas now, as you can see on your screens. But for those listening at home, it is quite a drop. It's an ankle breaker. That's a serious ledge to leap from. People desperate to find safety however they could. Others, indeed, on your screens now, you can see people hiding actually off the edge of a balcony, several floors above the ground.
No, they're only on a little ledge.
Just to find some cover from the shooter. Now, he is reportedly shooting at random last night. He did not target students in a particular manner. That's the report that was coming out of the Czech capital yesterday afternoon. Still trying to establish that motive, but as we said, the police indicating last night a certain fascination with killing, and they did refer to this Telegram channel, this social media platform he was running on his own Telegram uploads, where he had made links to this recent mass shooting in Russia, a potential inspiration for this event yesterday, this horrifying event in Prague.
And will there be a conversation then about this inspiration that he reportedly found online, that copycat attack, which we believe we may have seen in Prague yesterday based on a similar incident in Russia? How much weight, if any, does social media channels like Telegram, how much weight do they bear, responsibility do they bear on stopping these sorts of people being so inspired online?
These debates rage on regularly between the communication sphere and, of course, the security service, who engage very delicately with that world. Of course, there's so-called end-to-end encryption for many of these channels, which allows privacy for people like you and me to talk about our days and speak with our families. But of course, for people involved in organised crime gangs, international terrorism and narcotics, end-to-end encryption is useful in a rather different way. And so the promotion of these events, how they are shared online, is always a source of fascination and intrigue for the police and the security services. They will undoubtedly be looking into that. But also there are questions about how did this young man come to acquire so many weapons? How did this man end up on the rooftop of a university building with a long barrel rifle with a serious scope, taking aim at his peers? Those are the more immediate questions that I'm hearing being asked out of Prague this morning. How did he get armed and how was he allowed to use it?
Yeah, and armed legally as well. Thank you very much, Charlie Peters.
And can you imagine if you're the family of anyone who died in that Faculty of Art building, knowing now what you just said, that they could have evacuated more of the university, perhaps?
Yeah, and so close to Christmas as well. Our hearts do really go out to those families and friends of those 14 that are dead and 10 who remain seriously injured in hospital.